I was given the same directions. I've done these steps as they're laid out in the Big Book with the Big Book Step Study sponsor and the grace of God. North Palm Beach Big Book Step Study is my home group still and always will be from 1999. There's a Big Book Step Study in Newcastle, PA called the Original Recipe Group, which is changing lives too. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that lives had become unmanageable. Now, it explains a lot of things in this chapter. I was told to read it, underline, highlight, look up words. Then it was read to me. And the whole beginning of the book was designed to have me be convinced that I was an alcoholic and life was unmanageable, that probably no human power could relieve my alcoholism, but he could if he were sought. It was filler to have me be convinced of those three pertinent ideas, the first two steps, because they were important. The first step to me is about honesty. I had to be honest with myself for the very first time, gut-wrenching honest. When I touched anything, I couldn't stop. There's a lot of warnings. There's a lot of talk about self-knowledge, willpower, justification, rationalization, excuses, illusions, delusions, thoughts, insanity. Even though I did other stuff, when I read this, it was my entire life. It's how I acted and reacted. Because you know why? When I was out there, alcohol was my solution. When I couldn't deal with life, I'd pout, moan, I'd go and drink. Drinking was my solution. It wasn't my problem. You taught me that. But there was a point where alcohol stopped working. When I came to AA, you showed me, and we read it tonight, that the problem was up here. How I acted, how I reacted, how I thought, my thinking. I got rid of my solution. I put alcohol down. We read in the doctor's opinion, a physical allergy, mental obsession, that the phenomenon of craving starts, and unless I have a psychic change, a spiritual experience, there's little or no hope for me. And when I identified to that, I started to get a little bit, it started to click. You know, most of us are unwilling to admit. I couldn't admit it because I didn't know it. But you taught me that there was a spiritual solution. There's so much to talk about in this chapter, and a lot of it is identification. I identify to it all, but rather than talk about all the problems, there's a few parts in there that I really relate to. Something that helped me, because my problem wasn't stopping, it was staying stopped. And I never knew why. We get to the part when it says, "How then shall we describe to our readers?" Well, they told me it was the mental states that preceded a relapse into drinking, for obviously that was the crux of my problem. Critical, crucial point. I relapsed every time, days, weeks, or months before I ever picked up. I started to act and behave like I used to. I started to isolate. Even in recovery, I start to stop doing a 10-step, stop reviewing my day at night, start to isolate, don't go as many meetings, not help as many people. I have to be involved and around people that know me often, so you can tell me when you see that. You may save my life. There's a lot of warnings about even once we do recover. There's a lot of later behaviors described in the chapter. What happens later? You know, I had to learn this the hard way. I'm never going to be cured of alcoholism. Once an alcoholic, always. And some of the warnings is, over any period of time, it gets worse, never better. And some of us get a lot older in this fellowship. And so have our organs and internal things, and it's even that more dangerous. But they also tell us that even if I do recover and sanity's been returned and I've entered the world of the spirit, there's always that peculiar mental phenomenon that parallels with my sound reasoning that I have today. There may be that thought. What am I going to do when it comes? You've taught me what to do. Those strange mental blank spots, the insanity. This isn't my problem, that first drink. It's the mental states prior to it. Life can be unmanageable recovered, and that just means we return to health from a sickness. Having the problem removed, being in a position of neutrality, safe and protected, just like it says. The first step was very important for me, because if I couldn't be honest with my sponsor, if I couldn't be honest with myself at that juncture in my recovery, it was pointless to go on. That's why, bless you, the original manuscript said, if you're not convinced of these 3 pertinent issues, reread the book or throw it out. I was convinced by the time I got there, reading those stories. The Man of 30. Bill got that from The Common Sense of Drinking by Richard Peabody. You know how much I wanted to read this? My sponsor got a ruler, and he highlighted a bunch to show his sponsor he was doing, and I went and found out who Jim the car salesman was. Because of anonymity, they don't mention it. Ralph Furlong in the first edition, Another Prodigal Story. I read that story to understand this chapter. Harry B., A Different Slant, the shortest story in the big book. That's Fred, Not a Cloud in the Horizon. I learned about him and learned about how unmanageable they got. But they were able to find a spiritual way of life by first being honest, gut-wrenching honest, and having no reservation. I'm an alcoholic, and life is unmanageable. And when I touch it, I just can't stop. Those 2 questions on 44, that was me with anything and everything. There's a page in the middle. You have to, I really didn't. I prayed before I did this, and I trust him with all my heart. But Larry asked me about an hour and a half to do this, an hour and a half ago, if I would do this. There's a paragraph on page 39. See, these people died, went through this belladonna treatment and put out for 3 days. They learned the hard way and wrote things down so we who followed didn't have to make the same mistakes they did if I could just have enough willingness, honesty, and humility to maintain a certain simple attitude. But this paragraph that they mention in here on page 39, I think it is, they plead 3 times. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people, but the actual potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. Then they go ahead and say, we like to emphasize, re-emphasize, and smash home 3 times to get that point across out of our bitter experience. I had to take that to heart because I was all these people. Oh, thanks for the information. I know enough now not to do it. From the doctor's opinion to the end of page 43, it says it 44 times about no human power could restore sanity. Once more, the alcoholic at no certain times has no effective mental defense against that first drink, except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human can provide such a defense. I was convinced that there was a God, but it wasn't me by that time. I mean, I had given up before I read the chapter, and I believe, like the first woman spoke, that's when my sponsor appeared. As soon as I was ready, here it was. My higher power put Big Book Step Study, a great man, great mentor in my life to teach me what it is that I had to demonstrate once I did it. All of you could have taken me through the process, but unless I go out and demonstrate what I've learned, it's all for nothing. And what I've learned is this whole book's about forgiveness, love, and compassion. And I wasn't like that before. My whole life was total opposite. It's just a conclusion of the mind, but it was a very important conclusion that I needed to come to on my own terms. And when I finally did, I'm glad I had someone to guide me through it, and people like you to help me see the truth. When I do this, I like to end with a couple things from a vision for you. Thus we grow and so can you. Though you be but one man with this book in your hand, we hope and believe it contains all you will need to begin. To duplicate with such backing what we have accomplished is a matter of willingness, patience, and labor. Our book is meant to be just suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you could do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and we will surely meet some of you as we trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. My name is Joe Kanji. I'm a recovered alcoholic.